She believed a few well-placed words could get a black man moved from first class until he quietly pulled out his pocket and revealed his FBI credentials. Patricia Langford walked through Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, her luxury carry-on rolling effortlessly behind her. She had made this journey numerous times. Dallas to Washington, D.C., always first class, her preferred way to travel. Air travel felt routine to her. The priority access, the free champagne, the quiet conversations among business travelers. She anticipated comfort and privilege. When she reached her row and noticed a black man in a sharp navy suit already sitting next to her, she hesitated. He projected calm assurance, his laptop open, eyes focused on the screen, as though reviewing something significant. Patricia's mouth tightened. She placed her designer bag down with excessive force and settled into her seat, barely concealing her annoyance. First class wasn't meant to be this way. The man next to her, Daniel Stokes, paid her little attention. He remained concentrated, typing smoothly, engrossed in his tasks. The laptop's glow cast light on his dark complexion, accentuating his strong facial features. He carried himself like someone who earned his place there. Patricia, though, wasn't persuaded. She drew a sharp breath through her nostrils, adjusting in her seat. Her handbag inadvertently brushed his armrest. No response. She straightened up, looking around as though expecting a flight attendant to spot this error. Then she escalated things. She leaned slightly in his direction, just enough to make her presence felt. "Pardon me," she said, her tone deliberately courteous. "Are you certain you're in the correct seat?" Daniel barely glanced up. "Yes." That was all. No details. No justification. She cleared her throat, scanning the area again. This time she made eye contact with a flight attendant, Emily Jacobs, a woman in her early 30s, who had been helping passengers several rows forward. Patricia raised her hand slightly, gesturing for Emily to come over. Daniel released a sigh, quiet, but audible. Emily approached wearing her standard professional expression. "Is everything okay, ma'am?" Patricia forced a small laugh, shaking her head as though she found the circumstances amusing. "I believe there's been a small error. I think this gentleman has the wrong seat." Emily looked at Daniel, who finally stopped typing and raised his eyes. His face was neutral, but something flickered in his gaze. Not shock, not bewilderment. Something different. Emily retrieved the passenger list from her tablet, quickly reviewing the seat arrangements. "Actually, Mr. Stokes is in his proper seat," she said courteously. "Your boarding pass shows 2A, and he's in 2B. Patricia's eyes widened. Her grip tightened on her armrest's edge. "That's strange," she said, manufacturing a chuckle. "Are you certain?" I simply thought—" Emily smiled, already understanding the direction this was heading. "I'm positive, ma'am. Everything appears correct." Patricia's expression flickered. Her composed demeanor wavered momentarily before she masked it with a strained smile. "Well," she breathed, "I guess errors occur." She turned toward the window, but she wasn't finished. Not remotely. Daniel, meanwhile, had returned to his work. Emily paused briefly, sensing the tension, then gave Daniel a quick acknowledgement before moving away. But Patricia was seething. Her fingers drummed against her leg. Her breathing was rapid, eyes shifting toward the flight crew, then back to Daniel. He wasn't responding. He wasn't explaining himself or providing any comfort. He wasn't engaging in the little performance she had anticipated. That infuriated her more. She wasn't someone who let things go. But Patricia doesn't accept defeat quietly. She chooses to act. Patricia sat stiffly, arms folded across her chest, her thoughts spinning. This wasn't acceptable. She had traveled first class for decades, and never, not once, had she encountered a situation like this. The man beside her wasn't behaving inappropriately. But that was irrelevant to her. He didn't fit. Her breathing quickened, her frustration simmering just below the surface. She couldn't simply sit there and tolerate this. She pushed the call button. A gentle chime rang overhead, and Emily Jacobs returned moments later. Her smile remained unchanged, professional, and friendly. "Ma'am, is there something I can assist you with?" Patricia kept her voice quiet, her tone carefully controlled. "I'd like to request a different seat." Emily blinked. "Oh, are you uncomfortable? Is there a problem with the seat?" Patricia paused for a split second. She couldn't voice what she was actually thinking. Instead, she tilted her head toward Daniel, lowering her voice further. I don't feel at ease sitting here," she said, her words measured, intentional. Emily's smile wavered. "I'm sorry to hear that, ma'am. If there's a mechanical problem with the seat, I'd be glad to." "No, it's not the seat," Patricia cut her off. She exhaled sharply. "I'd just rather sit somewhere else." Emily glanced at Daniel, who had stopped typing once more, but remained silent. He was listening, observing, his hands poised over the keys, his expression tense. "Let me see if there are any available seats," Emily said, checking her tablet. "One moment." Patricia leaned back, lips compressed into a tight line. Daniel showed no reaction. He didn't protest, didn't acknowledge her, didn't question why she felt uncomfortable. That only made her more furious. A few rows up, a man in a suit jacket turned his head slightly, pretending to check his device, but obviously eavesdropping. Across the aisle, a woman nudged her spouse. People were taking notice. Emily's fingers moved rapidly across the screen. "I'm sorry. We're completely booked today, ma'am. There are no available first-class seats." Patricia's stomach tightened. Emily smiled apologetically. "Would you like me to check, Coach? There might be an opening there." Patricia's face burned. "Coach?" As though she ever would. Her voice stuck in her throat. "That won't work." Emily's smile remained steady. "In that case, I hope you're comfortable remaining in your assigned seat." Patricia managed a thin smile. "I suppose I don't have a choice." Emily nodded. "Please let me know if you need anything else." She departed, but Patricia hardly noticed. Her ears were buzzing. Daniel, still quiet, returned to his laptop and continued typing. That was it? That was his reaction? He was just going to act like she was invisible. Her hands clenched into fists. This wasn't over. She exhaled sharply and pressed the call button again. This time, Emily hesitated before returning. "Ma'am?" Patricia straightened up. "I need to speak with someone in authority." Emily's face stayed neutral. "I'm the senior flight attendant on this aircraft. Is there something I can explain for you?" Patricia's voice grew sharper. "I need to speak with the head crew member, or the captain." A murmur rippled through the cabin. Someone released a quiet laugh. Emily's expression remained professional, but her patience was clearly wearing thin. "Ma'am, the captain is preparing for departure and isn't available. But I'm here to help you." Patricia pursed her lips, her jaw clenching. Daniel wasn't reacting. He wasn't nervous, wasn't fidgeting uncomfortably. It was as though he had experienced this routine before. She lowered her voice again. "I don't feel secure. That transformed everything." Emily's smile disappeared. Her posture stiffened. Daniel stopped typing. Across the aisle, a middle-aged man with a wireless earpiece muttered, "Here we go once more." Emily straightened. "I apologize, ma'am, but could you explain what you mean?" Patricia folded her hands properly in her lap, tilting her head slightly. "I simply don't feel comfortable." She hesitated just long enough to suggest something without stating it directly. "I don't want to cause trouble, but I think it would be better if someone else had this seat." Daniel closed his laptop. This time, he looked directly into her eyes. And for the first time, Patricia felt a spark of doubt. But Patricia won't give up. And now, she's becoming more vocal. A silence descended over the cabin, the impact of Patricia's words lingering in the air. "I don't feel secure." The statement held weight. It wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. It was deliberately selected, intended to provoke a reaction. Emily, still standing beside her, didn't move immediately. Her stance stiffened, and her gaze moved toward Daniel, who had now completely shut his laptop, hands resting on top of it. He wasn't smiling, he wasn't scowling. He simply observed Patricia, analyzing her. Patricia didn't falter. "Not yet." Emily breathed slowly. "Ma'am," she said cautiously, "are you indicating you feel endangered?" Patricia angled her head slightly, giving the smallest shrug. "I'm not claiming that. I just don't feel comfortable. That's all." Across the aisle, the businessman with the Bluetooth scoffed and mumbled, "Incredible." A young woman 3 rows back raised her phone slightly, pretending to message, but clearly filming. Several other passengers whispered amongst themselves, heads turning toward Patricia. Patricia noticed. She could sense the change. The momentum was shifting against her. But she wasn't going to retreat. "This is a straightforward request," she continued, maintaining politeness. "I'm simply asking to be accommodated. If I'm uncomfortable, I should have the right to change seats. Shouldn't I?" Emily's jaw tightened. "Ma'am, I already verified. And there are no available first-class seats." Patricia pressed her lips together. "And economy?" Emily hesitated. "There are 2 open seats in coach." Patricia sat up straighter. "Perfect. He can take one of those." A low wave of murmurs swept through the cabin. Daniel inhaled deeply. His fingers tapped once on his laptop's surface before becoming still. Still. He wasn't arguing, wasn't responding, but he also wasn't moving. Emily blinked, as though replaying Patricia's words to ensure she heard correctly. "Ma'am," her voice was quieter now, firm just to clarify. "You want me to move this passenger to economy? Because you don't want to sit beside him?" Patricia nodded once, sitting straighter. "Exactly." Emily inhaled through her nose. "That's not going to happen." Patricia's eyes snapped up. "Pardon me." Emily clasped her hands in front of her, voice steady. "Mr. Stokes has a first-class ticket. Just like you, he's in his designated seat. I cannot and will not ask him to move." Patricia's face flushed. She was losing control of the situation. Passengers were staring openly now, some whispering, some shaking their heads. The young woman with the phone was still filming. Patricia felt her stomach twist. "This is absurd," she hissed. "I am simply requesting the same consideration that would be given to anyone else who feels uncomfortable." Emily didn't budge. "You are asking me to remove a paying passenger from his assigned first-class seat and move him to economy for no legitimate reason. That is not an accommodation. That is discrimination." A sharp silence followed. Someone let out a low whistle. Daniel hadn't moved, hadn't spoken a word. He just watched Patricia. Waiting. Patricia's pulse thundered in her ears. This wasn't how it was meant to happen. Emily squared her shoulders. "Ma'am, we are about to taxi. If you cannot remain seated and follow crew instructions, I will have to ask you to leave the aircraft." Patricia's stomach plummeted. "What?" Emily's tone stayed professional but firm. "You have 2 choices. Stay in your seat quietly or you can depart." But Mr. Stokes is not moving. A few passengers applauded softly. Patricia felt shame rise in her chest. This wasn't how things were supposed to work. She wasn't supposed to be the one getting scolded. She opened her mouth, ready to protest. But before she could, Daniel reached into his pocket. He pulled out a leather wallet, opened it, and held it up. And just like that, everything shifted. A gold FBI badge gleamed under the cabin lighting. The atmosphere in the plane transformed. Patricia's entire body went stiff. Passengers gasped. A few even chuckled. The young woman recording? She'd zoomed in instantly. Daniel's voice was calm. even, controlled. "Ma'am," he said smoothly, tilting his head, "would you like to file an official complaint? I can take your statement right now." Patricia's breath caught. She couldn't speak. Daniel didn't move, didn't blink. He just waited. And for the first time, Patricia felt genuinely cornered. But Patricia isn't just humiliated. She's about to face genuine consequences. The silence in the cabin was dense, stretching awkwardly between Patricia and Daniel. His FBI badge sparkled under the overhead lighting, the gold symbol unmistakable. It was the kind of thing you couldn't ignore, the kind of revelation that transforms the entire atmosphere. Passengers who had been murmuring moments before were now staring openly, some grinning, others amazed. Patricia's mouth became dry. Her mind raced for an explanation, an excuse, an escape route. This wasn't supposed to happen. The man she had attempted to have removed from the plane, the man she implied was a threat, was federal law enforcement. Her throat constricted. Daniel's expression hadn't altered. He wasn't smiling or gloating. He just sat there, badge in one hand, eyes fixed on hers. Waiting. His voice was steady, level, unreadable. "Would you like to file an official complaint, ma'am?" The words hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Patricia's body felt paralyzed, heat climbing up her neck. She attempted to speak, but all that emerged was a faint, choked. I. Daniel tilted his head slightly. "You said you felt uncomfortable," he continued, tone courteous but cutting. "That's a serious accusation on a federal flight. If you believe I've done something improper, I'd be glad to take your statement." Patricia's stomach dropped. She could feel it happening. The shift. Moments earlier, she had controlled the story. She had expected sympathy, expected someone, anyone, to support her. But now she was the one under examination. A man 2 rows ahead released a low chuckle. "Oh, this is golden," he muttered, shaking his head. The young woman recording focused on Patricia's face. Emily, the flight attendant, stood nearby, arms crossed, her face carefully neutral. But there was something in her eyes, a silent understanding, a quiet expectation. She was waiting. Everyone was waiting. Patricia's breath came quick and shallow. She couldn't admit she had lied. She couldn't say she had invented it all just to get rid of him. But if she persisted, if she pushed forward with her claim, she would be accusing a federal agent of being a danger on a flight. And that would have consequences. Her hands trembled in her lap. Daniel hadn't looked away. Finally, after what felt like forever. Patricia shook her head, barely a movement. "No," she whispered. "No complaint." Daniel nodded once, as if he had anticipated that. Slowly, he closed his badge, tucked it back into his jacket, and reopened his laptop. Just like that, it was finished. At least for him. For Patricia. The nightmare was just starting. A few passengers murmured their approval. A couple even clapped quietly. The businessman across the aisle smirked and returned to his newspaper. The young woman with the phone. She was already typing. Patricia could feel her heart racing. She wanted to disappear into her seat, to vanish, to go back in time and undo the last 10 minutes. But there was no undoing this. She had embarrassed herself publicly. She had been exposed. And worse, people had witnessed it, recorded it. Her eyes darted around the cabin, looking for an ally, someone who might offer a sympathetic glance. No one did. Even Emily, the one person who had been patient with her, had lost the warmth in her expression. Patricia swallowed hard. She wanted to argue, wanted to say something to regain control. But she knew. Deep down, there was nothing left to say. The flight wasn't even airborne yet, and somehow she had already lost. But Patricia isn't just embarrassed. She's about to face real consequences. Patricia sat rigidly in her seat, staring straight ahead. Her breathing was shallow, her face burning. This wasn't just embarrassment. This was humiliation. Daniel had already moved on. He had opened his laptop again, fingers tapping calmly on the keyboard. It was as if she didn't exist. The rest of the cabin, however, they hadn't forgotten. Across the aisle, the businessman with the Bluetooth smirked to himself. The woman recording had stopped typing, but her phone was still angled slightly upward, as if waiting for Patricia to react. Even the flight attendants, the ones who were supposed to be neutral, had a different energy about them now. Emily, the lead flight attendant, stood nearby, observing. Patricia felt it all. The weight of the stairs, the quiet judgment in the air. She had miscalculated. Severely. Her fingers twitched in her lap, her heart pounding. This wasn't just some minor misunderstanding she could smooth over with a forced laugh and a dismissive wave. She had tried to have an FBI agent removed from his seat, on camera. The implications were settling in now, heavy in her chest. Her mouth was dry. Emily finally stepped closer. Her tone still polite, but no longer gentle. "Ma'am," she said, keeping her voice low. "I need to confirm that you're okay to remain on this flight without further disruption." Patricia stiffened. A handful of passengers glanced over, pretending not to eavesdrop, but absolutely listening. She wanted to snap, wanted to demand why she was the one being treated like the problem when all she had done was express discomfort. But Daniel's badge had changed everything. She was trapped now. The power she thought she had, gone. She forced her lips into what she hoped was a calm expression. "I'm fine." Emily's gaze lingered. Then slowly she nodded. "I'm going to hold you to that." Then she turned and walked away. Patricia exhaled shakily, clenching her hands together in her lap. It was over. At least that's what she thought. A sharp chime broke the silence. She looked up just as the young woman with the phone smirked at her screen and tapped twice. Patricia's stomach clenched. She knew that look. She had seen it on her own grandchildren's faces when they shared something online, something meant to spread fast. Her fingers tightened around the armrest. She turned slightly, heart pounding, and stole a glance at the woman's screen. The video was already uploaded. Patricia felt like the air had been knocked from her lungs. The caption was simple. "Racist woman tries to remove black man from first class, then learns he's FBI." Patricia's hands went cold. The flight wasn't even in the air yet, and somehow she had already lost. And if it was already online, that meant there was no stopping what came next. She turned her head forward again, trying to steady her breathing, trying to convince herself that maybe it wouldn't be so bad. Maybe no one would care. Maybe it wouldn't spread. Maybe. Her phone vibrated in her purse, once, twice, a third time. Patricia's chest tightened. She didn't want to look. She didn't want to know. But her hands moved on their own, digging into her bag, fingers wrapping around the device. She pulled it out and her stomach dropped. Text messages. From acquaintances, from family, from people she hadn't heard from in months. Each one was a variation of the same question. "Patricia, is this you? Just saw a video. Tell me this isn't real." Oh my God, what did you do? Her heartbeat roared in her ears. She swiped open her browser with trembling hands and tapped on Twitter. It took less than a second. Her name was already trending. The video had been uploaded less than 5 minutes ago, and, yet, it had already been viewed over 20,000 times. And the comments? They were pouring in. Patricia's vision blurred as she read the first few. Karma is real. This lady really thought she could get away with it. Hope she enjoys the internet roasting she's about to get. Patricia's breath hitched. Her world wasn't just collapsing, it was burning. And for the first time, Patricia realized there was no coming back from this. But what happens after the flight lands is beyond Patricia's worst fears. Patricia gripped her phone so tightly that her knuckles turned white. The cabin noise faded into the background, drowned out by the pounding of her own pulse. She could barely breathe. The video was still spreading, the view count ticking higher every time she refreshed. 30,000 views. 42,000. 61,000. It wasn't slowing down. She blinked rapidly, her mind scrambling for an escape, a way to stop this before it was too late. But it was too late. She swiped down, reading more comments. Imagine being this entitled, LMAO. She really thought she was going to get away with it. The FBI part made my whole day instant karma. Expose her name. We need to know who she is. Her chest tightened. She glanced around the cabin as if searching for a way to reverse time. But nobody was looking at her anymore. They didn't need to. They had seen enough. She shifted in her seat, her whole body rigid. Daniel, still beside her, hadn't moved. His fingers tapped lightly on his laptop keyboard. If he was aware of the video, he didn't show it. He didn't care, and that somehow made it worse. Patricia's phone buzzed again. She flinched, then looked down. Her sister. She hesitated, then pressed the decline button with a shaky finger. She wasn't ready for that conversation. She wasn't ready for any of this. The plane had barely even taken off, and yet her world was already collapsing around her. She exhaled sharply, forcing herself to stay calm. She needed a plan, a way to fix this. She could apologize. Maybe that would help. Number that would only fuel the fire. She could ignore it. Pretend she hadn't seen the video. Number that was worse. Her mind raced, her thoughts colliding, spiraling, and then the pilot's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we are beginning our descent into Washington, D.C. The local time is 5:43 p.m. Please ensure your seatbelts are fastened as we prepare for landing. Patricia's heart dropped. Landing. She had been so focused on the chaos inside the plane that she had forgotten what was waiting for her outside of it. She refreshed the video one last time. 97,000 views. Her name was trending. Her hand shook as she stuffed her phone back into her bag, trying to convince herself that she could still get ahead of this, that maybe, just maybe, it wouldn't be as bad as she thought. But Patricia still hopes the storm will pass until she turns on the news. Patricia practically bolted off the plane the second the doors opened. She ignored the side glances, the quiet chuckles, the unspoken judgment hanging in the air. She just needed to get out. But as she hurried into Reagan National Airport, her pulse skipped at what she saw waiting near baggage claim. A cluster of reporters. Not a huge crowd, not yet. But enough. A woman in a navy blazer held a microphone near her lips, reading from her phone as a cameraman filmed her. The now viral video shows an unidentified woman attempting to have an FBI agent removed from first class, citing discomfort. The clip has gained over 1 million views in just a few hours. Patricia stopped breathing. 1 million? That was impossible. She turned her head quickly, praying they hadn't seen her. But one of the reporters locked eyes with her. The woman's face lit up. Wait, that's her. Patricia spun on her heel, panic spiking in her chest. She could not be seen like this. She moved fast, her heels clicking sharply against the tile floor. She needed to get to the exit. Now, but her phone buzzed violently in her purse. Texts, missed calls, alerts. She couldn't outrun it. She shoved past a group of travelers, her breath short, her hands clammy. She barely made it to the curb before her name was shouted behind her. Ms. Langford, do you have a response to the video? She winced. She hadn't even realized her name had been released yet. A taxi slowed near the curb, and she nearly threw herself into the back seat. Go, she snapped at the driver. Now, he raised an eyebrow, but pulled away from the curb without a word. Patricia pressed her hands to her temples. Eyes squeezed shut. 1 million views. Her stomach churned. She had built her whole life on careful reputation management, a good image, a respected name. And, in a single afternoon. It was gone. Her phone vibrated again. This time, it was a number she didn't recognize. She stared at it, heart hammering. Then just before it went to voicemail, she swiped to answer. "Hello?" A brief silence, then a clipped voice. "Ms. Langford, this is James Rollins, chair of the Marston Foundation. I assume you're aware of the situation." Patricia's mouth went dry. She had been on the Marston Foundation board for years, a charity that prided itself on its progressive image, inclusivity, and ethical leadership. And she already knew what this call was about. She swallowed. "James, We're going to need you to step down," he interrupted. "Immediately." Patricia stared blankly ahead. It wasn't a request. It was an order. Her pulse drummed in her ears. "But this is being taken out of context. The board disagrees." His voice was flat. "Final. We'll issue a public statement by morning. We expect your resignation by then." A sharp beep. He had hung up. Patricia lowered the phone slowly. Her career was over. Her reputation was gone. And the worst part? No one cared about her explanation. They had seen the video, and the video was enough. She let out a shaky breath. This wasn't something she could control. This was something she had done to herself, and now she had to live with it. Meanwhile, Daniel Stokes hadn't even spared her another thought. By now, he was probably in a meeting, completely unbothered, his life untouched. Because for him? This had been just another Tuesday. If this story made you think, don't forget to subscribe for more gripping real-life scenarios.